Hey guys, Andrew Shrout. I'm here in the sideboard. I'm sitting with Brad Nelson. How's it going, Brad?
It's going wonderful.
You have started off this tournament 2-0 with
I did.
A spicy brew.
It is spicy. It's called Chain to the Rocks.
Yeah, but what deck does that card go in?
RHOX, Chain to the Rocks.
Okay, so chain to the Rhinoceros.
Chain to the Rhinoceros. No, I like Chain to the Rocks more.
Fair enough. That joke doesn't really work when you say it out loud, I don't think.
Now that I think about it, okay,
Yeah.
I'm playing 4-color midrange.
Sure, yes. Yeah, you're playing 4-color midrange, basically just kind of jamming Mardu and Abzan together.
Yeah, we tried the Treasure Cruisers, didn't work.
Oh, you tried to go the full
No,
five?
actually no.
That's probably the next step.
Yep.
Let's start from the top. But why did you decide to build a deck in this style?
Actually, I got back really late Monday night from GP New Jersey, and I just woke up in the middle of the night. I think I drank too much caffeine on the drive home, so I was up at like 3 in the morning, and I was like, well, I kind of want to try a 4-color deck, like with all the good cards from these 2-color combinations, because like the Rhino's deal damage ability like doesn't really get utilized that often, really.
Right.
And I wanted to try a deck with like Rhinos and Crackling Dooms and Sarkons. And how do I build that? And so I got greedy immediately and was like, I'm also want to just play Chain to the Rocks because Chain to the Rocks, RHOX, obviously.
That was the whole point, right?
Yes,
Just
it
to make
was.
the joke?
It was,
Yeah.
actually.
Okay.
I worked on the deck and I built this version. I thought it was really bad. The next daily I was like, you know what, I'm going to try it, but I probably am just going to lose round 1 to Mana Screw and just be mad and drop. But I did, and I 4-0'd, and ever since I kept working on the deck because like the mana's actually good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the choice of threats in this deck, we talked about Siege Rhino. You got Butcher the Horde as well. Like, you kind of have your pick.
Yep.
I know you mentioned that you mentioned earlier when you were talking to me that you had Rabble Masters in the deck at one point.
Yeah, it originally had 4 Rabble, 4 Courser.
Okay. But
the Rabble Masters just added a lot of variance that the deck normally didn't need. Like on the draw, it was really bad. Sometimes it was bad on the play. Sometimes it was bad when I drew too many of the other creatures. I wanted something to make Butchers good though.
All right.
And that's what Rabble Master did for the Mardu decks, and that's what I thought it would do for this deck. But I found that Satyr Wayfinder was a little bit more responsible with my mana base.
Okay. So the actual threat count, as you finally ended up with it, was not 4 Sylvan Caryatid, not really a threat, but then 2 Satyr Wayfinder, again, not really a threat. And then 4 Courser of Crufix, 3 Butcher of the Horde, 4 Siege Rhino. That's the creature base, then 2 Sarkon.
And 2 Sarkons and 2 Elspeths, and even an Ajani can get aggressive. Yeah, like the deck seems very threat light, but the Rhinos lose life abilities, the Lightning Strikes, and the Crackling Dooms all give this deck the ability that when you're grinding, they're just losing incidental life points.
Sure.
And eventually you might just be able to burn them out. And that's one of the things that I found about this deck is we're both playing Drago, and I can just burn them out in the late game.
Okay, fair enough. Before we talk about the spell selection, which you do have a pretty healthy selection of removal spells, but before we get there, I want to talk a little bit about how you make this work. Because we are basically just jamming 2 3-color decks together and hoping the mana base works out. You mentioned that you kind of just took a gamble with it in a daily event, but the mana base you've ended up with is actually, it's not as like airtight as it would look on paper. Like, you don't have the full 8 Tri-lands even.
Nope.
So the mana base as it is, 4 temples, Temple of Plenty, 6 Tri-lands, 4 Sandstep Citadel and 2 Nomad Outpost, 6 fetch lands, 4 Wooded Foothills and 2 Bloodstained Mire, and then 2 Mana Confluence, Llanowar Waste, and a bunch of basics.
Yep, 6 basics.
So how did we arrive at that?
Well, we actually were 1 land off the original version. The original version had a 3 Temple of Plenty and a Battlefield Forge, and I added the Plenty because I was getting my red fine. But the thing about that mana is that I wanted the best Tri-land or the best temple to go along with fetching for mountains, and that just came up to be the best one. Like, I want it to not only, I want all my tap lands to cast my Caryatids, but we couldn't with Nomad, but luckily we want the Wooded Foothills to cast Chain to the Rocks.
Sure.
So you can get a mountain for Chain to the Rocks. And it was just me used to building 4-color decks throughout the years that I came to pretty much exactly what I wanted to use, but it made me realize that the mana in decks like Abzan and Mardu are like actually too good. Like they run all these Tri-lands and all these temples, and I realized that looking at how games played out, I actually watched some Abzan games to just focus on this, that they could cast an Abzan Charm like 5 different ways with just the 3 lands they had in play. Like, it was just like Tri-land, and a temple. And I'm like, you know what, I want some untapped land so I can cast my spells. You can't have perfect mana base. And so, yeah, like, it came out to be really good, and sure, sometimes you have a couple hiccups here or there, but that's every mana base.
Okay. I talked about the removal spells. You have some nice ones, and of course you would with the full spread of colors. But we talked about Chain of the Rocks. You kind of had to build the mana base around that. That was kind of the point from the start. 3 Chain of the Rocks, 4 Lightning Strike, 4 Crackling Doom, and then 2 Murderous Cut to round things out.
Yep.
So how did you arrive at that particular removal suite?
Well, first I was playing some Abzan Charms, and I found that they're too hard on the mana, and I want a mountain in play as early as possible. So they were just like the catch removal spell. But the reason that the removal's like this is Crackling Doom's the best removal spell in the format, because it just kills like these rogue creatures through protection spells. It kills their biggest creature without having to target it, and it deals them some damage. So it's really good against like Planeswalkers, Sorens, any threat, right? Like there's not a lot of removal spells outside of Murderous Cut that can kill anything at any time.
Sure.
And that's what I really like about it. Lightning Strike is a card that I wanted against like Jeskai and Rabble Masters and things like that. And Chain of the Rocks and Murderous Cut are your cheapest ones to protect your Planeswalkers.
Gotcha. Also,
the deck centers around Ajani a lot of times after sideboard, 1 main, 1 side, and you can get your Chain of the Rocks with it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you talked about having access to Planeswalkers. You said you kind of wanted to start with Sarkhan early. There are a lot of Planeswalkers in this 75.
Yeah.
5 in the main, 2 Sarkhan the Dragon Speaker, 1 Ajani Mentor of Heroes, and then 2 Elspeth Suns Champion, and then a second Ajani and 3 Xenagos the Reveler in the sideboard.
Yeah, we forgot about Xenagos for a long time in this format, and it is very good after sideboard in a lot of situations. Like, the card is better than it's ever been, and there's even less decks that it's bad against right now in the format.
Okay.
But it's still not a main deckable card in my opinion, but the card is phenomenal after sideboard when your deck is focused and theirs is focused.
Okay.
It's like good against Abzan, good against Heroic, just because you can chump block and they have to waste their God's Willing to kill it, and you still have a chump blocker. It's amazing against like the decks that want to Wrath us and the decks that we want to Wrath.
Okay. Yeah, you actually have a lot of Wraths in the sideboard. So you have access to 4 Anger of the Gods and 2 End Hostility out of the board.
Yeah, I mean, there's just matchups like that have Hornet Queens and Whip decks that you just want to kill everything, and you can't fight them on any other access point. So you have to have Planeswalkers and Master Removal spells. And it's the same thing with like my Red-White Mac deck, same thing with Mardu Midrange. Like they just go over the top of you with threats, but they're really weak to Master Removal.
Gotcha. All right, and then rounding out the sideboard, 5 cards that I kind of noticed a theme. You have 1 Glare of Heresy, 2 Thoughtseize, and 2 Utter End.
They all are very good on the draw or against Elspeth in general. Like I like Thoughtseizes on the draw in the mid-range matchups just because tempo doesn't matter after turns 5 or 6, but you have to get there. You don't really want them to curve out on you. So sometimes the Thoughtseize is great, and you don't want to flood out on Thoughtseizes late in the game. But Glare and Utter End are just there to help the Butchers kill Elspeths, because Elspeth is really strong against you. It's one of the only things Abzan has as a trump, because they have Hero's Downfall and Utter End and more Elspeths than you. But that's the only advantage they have against you.
All right. So it seems like you've got your bases pretty well covered between main and side. What are you afraid to face with this deck? Do you know yet?
I think Mardu Midrange with a good pilot is a tough matchup just because their deck is so malleable, just like mine.
Sure.
And they have Rabble Masters that can just win games sometimes.
Okay.
And I don't really want to bring in a bunch of Angers against them because they have a late game too.
Okay.
It's a tough matchup. It's all about who sideboards better than the other person. But you also have coursers against them, so I don't really know what my bad matchups are. Like, I was beating a lot of things on Moto. Like, Todd and I, like, played this deck on Moto. First, Todd hated the deck. Like, he was just like, come on, buddy, I'm not doing this. I'm like, just play a daily. And he's like, I'm in. I'm so in.
All right.
It was awesome.
Fair enough.
And we've just been crushing on Moto with it. Like, every time I've lost, it was because I tried something new and it was bad.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, like, you are started 2-0. Todd Anderson also playing the deck, also started 2-0. So.
Yep, and same with a Roanoke local is playing the deck as well here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 6-0 so far.
Yep.
All right. Well, keep it up. I'll be
Thanks so
rooting
much,
for you.
man. And
Whoa!
Ah!
He's 2-0 as well. He's here too.
Can we cut?
No.
Send it to Cedric.
He's there. Not Cedric. We're like a commercial.
To Matthias?
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
Stick
bye.
around. We've got plenty more coverage coming of the Standard Open here in Richmond.